Becoming Beauvoir a Life by Kate Kirkpatrick. 5th, The Valkyrie and the Playboy. When Beauvoir arrived at Marignac in August 1929, she needed to take stock of her situation. Marignac was the only place she had ever had a room to herself, so she took advantage of the privacy to do what she called an appraisal of her life. She believed in Sartre, and believed that her growing tenderness towards him was not an infidelity to the Lama or to Jacques. In the weeks since Mathieu had left Paris, Beauvoir and Sartre became closer in mind and body. They had not yet consummated their relationship, but in his room in the Cité Universitaire it was a case of, Beauvoir later told Bear, everything but sex itself. Over the next week, as Beauvoir carried out her appraisal, she catalogued memories and feelings which, being human, changed from day to day: doubts, devastation, elation. She didn't take this variation as a reason to upbraid herself, but rather as deserving reflection. While she needed Sartre, she loved Edmo. In her own words, she loved what Sartre brought her, and she loved what Mathieu was. At this point, Sartre was not yet essential. The weather in the Corsie was beautiful and the family was drawn close by the recent death of grandfather Bertrand de Beauvoir. This was the first summer without him. Gandillac, Merleau-Ponty's Catholic friend, came to visit and proposed that the sisters should visit him, too. He was only an hour's train ride away. Fran always forbade it, even though he was a respectable Catholic man, and she liked him. It wasn't proper. What about a day trip to Tulle? Gandillac asked. It was about half as far away. Their mother permitted this on one embarrassing condition: she was coming to chaperone. On August the 9th, Simone visited Uzerche with Gandillac and thought of nothing but Sartre. The day after, they walked on the banks of the Vézère and she thought of the Lama. The workings of her mind were invisible to Fran Ois's escorting eyes, but it soon became evident that there were other means of escaping her vigilance. On August the 19th, the Bertrand de Beauvoirs moved from Marignac to La Grille-Ray, George's sister's estate. At breakfast the next morning, her cousin Madeleine rushed into the kitchen and told Simone that there was a man waiting for her in a nearby field. It was Sartre. She knew he would come. The prospect of his visit made her passionately happy. At this point, Beauvoir's diaries, in which she so regularly confided, stop. They are resumed after Sartre's stay, when she recounts their perfecte stuff, ideas and caresses. It seems reasonable to speculate that she found her usually regimented time too valuable to waste in writing when it could be spent with Sartre. On the first day of his visit she suggested that they should go for a walk, but Sartre declined, telling her that he was allergic to chlorophyll. They sat in a meadow and talked instead. There was not enough time in the world to dry up the wells of their conversation. Sartre stayed in the Hôtel de la Boule d'Or in Saint-Germain-les-Belles. Simone woke up each morning feeling elated, running through the meadows thinking about what she would tell him that day. They lay in the grass and she talked to him about her parents, Elni, Jaja, her school, Jacques. On hearing about the latter, Sartre said that he thought marriage was a trap, although he knew it was hard for women of her background to avoid. He admired her Valkyrie spirit and told her he would be sad to see her lose it. In parched August fields they began to plan a different future. Together they would travel, have adventures, work hard, write famous works and live lives of passionate freedom. He would give her much, he said, but he could not give her all of himself. He needed to be free. He had been engaged once already but now was terrified of marriage, children and possessions. She found sensitive Sartre surprising when he told her his goal was to be the great writer he was destined to be. And it was during this trip that Sartre gave her the spiel about how he needed to preserve his freedom in order to realize his destiny as a great man. He was a Baladin, a wanderer who needed to travel the world untethered in order to gain material for his great works. In characteristic Sartrean style, this proposal was made with literary and philosophical sophistication. The Baladin fashioned himself on was the Playboy of the Irish playwright J.M. Synge's The Playboy of the Western World. The memoir version of this conversation has often been invoked to claim that Sartre set the expectations of their relationship. inflicting his infidelity on Simone. But the diaries show that her heart had many objects of affection, each of whom she found lovable for his own reasons. In Marignac that August, Sartre shared his notebooks with her and described his thinking on psychology and the imagination, as well as his theory of contingency. He had been reading many of the same things she had, so their conversations were buttressed by interests that stretched back into both of their pasts. Alongside the philosophy they had both read for the augurgiation, their mutual love of literature gave them an uncommonly deep shared world. She found his ideas interesting, inspiring, hopeful, even, and began to realize that she was becoming more and more attracted to his beautiful, serious head. Simone had told her parents that she and Sartre were collaborating on a critical study of Marxism, hoping that their hatred of communism might overpower their concern for propriety. Would it work? Not for long. 4 days after Sartre arrived, they were together in a meadow when Georges and Francois approached. The sprawling philosophers jumped to their feet, and her father looked embarrassed. He addressed his words to Sartre. People were starting to talk. Could he please leave the district? Simone was indignant, and asked her father why he spoke to her friend in this tone. Her mother began to shout at her. Sartre assured them that he would leave soon, but said that they were working on a philosophical inquiry they needed to finish first. Whether or not her parents believed them, they returned to the house, and Sartre departed several days later on September the 1st. After Sartre left, Beauvoir wrote in her diary that she demanded nothing more from Sartre than the moments he wants to give her. She had begun to imagine a future that enabled her to reconcile her hopes of independence and love, and it made her feel elated. In her diary she wrote, "The Valkyrie hidden in the depths of this tender little girl poured joy into her in great waves, and she knew herself to be strong as him." After Sartre departed, she expressed delight at being alone, uniquely her own, free and strong. In her solitude she had space to reflect on incertitude, for her heart was certain that she loved Sartre, she loved the Lama, and she could love Jacques, each in a different manner. But she did not know how to reconcile all of her loves. So after Sartre left, on the 2 to 4 September, the Valkyrie continued her project of taking stock. She was happy, overflowing with possibility and feeling as though the life she had longed for had finally begun. Sartre was very much an ingredient in her happiness. But contrary to what has been widely written and assumed, he was not the only ingredient. Sartre's role was to be, in my heart, in my body, and above all, for in my heart and my body many others could be the incomparable friend of my thought. Beauvoir settled on a resolution: I will love each one as if he were the only one. I will take from each one all that he has for me, and I will give him everything I can give him. Who can reproach me? There were days when she wasn't sure what her feelings for Sartre were precisely, but felt certain that they were not yet love. Before their legendary pact, therefore, Beauvoir came to the conclusion that she would love multiple men in the ways she thought them lovable. As early as 1926 she wrote in her diary that she did not think she had the right to give a lover an image he likes in place of me, or to be really unfaithful to what I am. One should give only what one can give. 2 days later the Lama arrived and they stayed together in a hotel. They had hired separate rooms, but she enjoyed the 2 mornings they spent together, tenderly remembering his blue pajamas and the voice in which he said, "Bonjour, Castor." Beauvoir's diary descriptions of Mathieu are often imbued with physical attraction, drawing attention to his body, his face, his voice, his posture, what he wore and how it fitted him. But she began to see his attractiveness as partial in comparison with Sartre's. She did not hold him in high esteem morally, and intellectually he didn't satisfy her. So was Mathieu Beauvoir's first lover. The diary leaves this obscure. We have seen already that at the time of her interviews with Diderot, Beauvoir denied that her relationship with Mathieu had been sexual. But Sartre and Mathieu both said the opposite. Sartre confirmed to Jean Gerassi, Street Fast Son, that Mathieu was in love with her, and she was in love with Mathieu. In fact, he was her first lover. On this basis some have concluded that their translating Aristotle was not what Beauvoir claimed. In the prime of life, Beauvoir wrote that she surrendered her virginity with glad abandon, but she does not specify to whom. However, a passage in the diaries may support Beauvoir's denials. She wrote that it was beautiful that with this sensual man Mahieu nothing physical intervened between us. While with Sartre, who isn't sensual, the harmony of our bodies has a meaning that makes our love more beautiful. This relationship presents us with a strange conundrum. Beauvoir denied that it was sexual. The men claimed it was. When I asked Beauvoir's friend and adopted daughter Sylvie Le Bon de Beauvoir, she confirmed that Simone was attracted to Mahieu and their relationship was intimate, but not consummated in the period before Beauvoir met Sartre. At this stage, Beauvoir was a respectable Catholic woman, and there were things a respectable Catholic woman didn't do. In an interview given later in life, Beauvoir was asked if there was anything she wished, in hindsight, that she had included in her memoirs. Her answer was, a frank and balanced account of her own sexuality. A truly sincere one, from a feminist point of view. Even in her own diaries, Beauvoir did not give an altogether frank account of her experiences. Did she fear that her mother might read them? She had yet to discover the way her personal life would be distorted by fame, used to distract attention from her philosophy and her politics.